Sacred Sojourners, a space where we gather around the fire for storytelling.
This is a journey of spiritual awakening, learning to trust in the universe and aligning to our highest path.
It's through our voices from the perspective of the masculine and the feminine, which is the real life dance between us, where we are going to share stories about our journey, our triggers, our love, all as we walk with the universe, not against it.
Zan and I are two souls having our human experience who are walking through the fire together with our three dogs. And now we're inviting you in to witness. If you've been feeling the pull to awaken,
Then you can finally start to trust.
and then to align to your highest good.
Now, you're exactly where you're meant to be. Welcome to the campfire for the spiritually curious. This is the Sacred Sojourners podcast. If you've ever felt like your emotions are coming out of nowhere, like something small sets you off way bigger than it should, what if it's not random?
Today we're going to be talking about awakening and emotional intensity and something called samskaras. Today we're going to be talking about awakening and emotional intensity, coming to awareness and patterns. Today's going to be a loaded show. Loaded show.
Yeah,
Grab the popcorn.
get your popcorn for reals.
And I'm your co-host. I'm Troy Halkner, a former Baptist pastor who spent 15 years preaching from the pulpit before stepping away to rediscover a sacred through curiosity, through nature, and a direct relationship with the divine.
And I'm your other co-host, Zan Kavanaugh, and Troy's sweetie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a wisdom keeper and a steward of consciousness who spent over 20 years studying and applying the laws of the universe, manifesting reality as an entrepreneur and an artist, helping people rediscover their own inner authority. And so, since today's show is about awakening, we thought that it might be a good idea to read this awesome little paragraph from The Abundance Alchemist, which you found on Instagram?
Yeah, Facebook.
Facebook. Okay. So the show is going to be about awakening because when Troy and I first got together, I had been studying spirituality, like I said, for over 20 years. If you listen to our first ever podcast, you'll know that I dork out and sharing anything I can to help people wake up. And it comes with a warning. But I don't think he really realized. I know he wanted to get there, but I don't think he really realized what it was going to take to go through there. And so people are like, oh, I want to wake up. But it's kind of a rite of passage, right?
Yep, sure was.
So there is a cost. And so I'm going to read this. You will question yourself more times than you can count. People once understood you will start to look at you differently. Some will say you've changed. Others will quietly step back. The conversations that once felt normal will begin to feel empty. The environments that once felt safe will start to feel small. Awakening does that. It stretches your awareness until the old version of your life no longer fits you the same way. You're going to see patterns that you can no longer ignore. You'll notice how fear drives behavior, how ego hides inside certainty, and how many people are acting from survival rather than the truth. That's a big one. That clarity is uncomfortable, and it separates you from the illusions you once shared with everyone else. There will be moments where you wish you could go back to not seeing so much. That old saying, ignorance is bliss, but you can't help to unsee it. Awakening isn't a comforting story you adopt. It's the gradual dismantling of everything that was never truly you. It strips away the roles, the expectations, the borrowed beliefs that were given to you by your parents and the people who
Right.
raised you, until what remains is something quieter but stronger, less approval, less noise, more honesty. And while the path can feel lonely at times, what you gain is something most people spend their entire lives searching for: the freedom to finally live as who you actually are.
Mm. Yeah, that's a mouthful right there. I'm what kind of comes to me on that is where the Lord Jesus talks about the awakening and how you really have to count the cost of doing the work, because if you don't count the cost, you're not going to see the work through. It can't be undone.
Right.
Once you start, you don't go back. And that's what the Lord Jesus was talking about, counting the cost before you start. And when you do start, it's not something you can change your mind on. It's not easy. It's not easy work, but it's very rewarding work.
And so when you started uncovering things with me, you were initially excited, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's the way it starts. I really believe the awakening starts with excitement. Oh, I found my path. I found my journey. What I've been looking for my whole life spiritually. I finally found it. But in finding that, from being in a relationship with you, and also, what takes place within that is you start being mirrored, and you start being shown the things that's inside of you that drives the way you live your life now, which is far from the higher person that you feel the call to become.
Right. I love that because Teal Swan talked about that. You can't truly work on yourself solo. Yes, of course you can do, spiritual push-ups if you will, but it's not until you get in relationship and have intimacy,
Mm.
true intimacy, which is not, not just like sex, but really getting to know somebody and to have them witness you and see those deeper, darker spaces. Can you actually even see them yourself?
Right.
Right? And
Yep.
so she says that if you wanna do the work, you have to be in relationship, which I know a lot of people are trying to get in relationship, but if you are in relationship, this is a wonderful podcast for you to listen to because there's so many opportunities in here for you to notice the patterns. We're gonna go and tell a story about how this began. Troy and we'd been friends for probably 6 or 7 months at this point, and I invited him to the Temple of the Universe with me, and it was really great for me because I was like, "Yay, I'm gonna show him the new things, all the fun things about spirituality." And so we go to the Temple of the Universe. And so what did you think when I said, "Let's go to the Temple of the Universe"?
I didn't really know what to think. I didn't know what to expect. I remember one of my professors in college says, you're going to hear a lot of people. You're going to go sit under a lot of teachings, a lot of preachings. And he told me, he said, just remember, as you go, you to meat and spit out the bone. In other words, take what you can get and as truth and walk away with it. But there's going to be a lot of stuff that ain't truth. And I didn't really know what to expect. I never heard of Mickey Singer. And as we walked in and the way that they sat on the floor and just things was totally different than what I was used to within the Baptist world. But
Let's just give a little context to Vicky Singer and the Temple of the Universe. So
hmm
for anybody out there that is new to this conversation, Michael Singer wrote a book called The Surrender Experiment. And that book actually came to me when I was living in Colorado and I was going through a really tough time. I had long COVID and I was just kind of stuck. And some of the teachers that I was working with at that time had said, read that book. And he also wrote Untethered Soul. And he does a podcast also is of every time you go to the temple, he
his
just
services.
yeah, they just record it and put it on Spotify, so we highly recommend that. And but he's here, right about 20 minutes from us in High Springs, and it's so wonderful because it's a spiritual teaching and it's right there. So, what a beautiful thing for us to go to. However, I think that in the time that we went, Troy was open and excited and listening, and he started to learn about samskaras.
Mm.
So Mickey was talking about samskaras that are basically old patterns, right? Things about you that are stuck in your subconscious, basically, that you don't necessarily look at. And so I'm going to let Troy tell a little bit of the story, but I want you listening to think about how this relates to you in your life. And you'll know as he tells the story because it will ping, it will come in your body. You will feel it somewhere in your body. So pay attention to that.
Okay. As we went to the Temple of the Universe, I heard the concept of samskaras, which are basically stored emotional impressions that unprocessed. That I think of samskaras as I listened to him talk that night. He talked about how we suppress, trauma within our life that we've gone through instead of looking at it and dealing with it and allowing it to pass through, to where as we continue to live life, we hit these situations, another situation comes up, like that emotional situation that I went through as a child. And I lived my life from that moment instead of living in the present now because I remember the pain that samskara brought to me. And
Right, like old beliefs or religious conditioning or
mhm.
relationship wounds.
It could be a number of things where it comes from. In other words, like you said, relationship wounds. It can be from parents. I mean, my parents. There was a lot of stuff from my parents who I loved dearly, and I'm not down on them at all. They were doing the best they knew with what they had. Teachers in school. I can think of teachers in school who uh,
Influenced you.
influenced me more in a negative way than a positive way.
Well, right, because we're kids of the 70s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so people listening now, I think, are more, they're people are more conscious about our feelings and our emotions and things. But when we grew up, it was just like you just got backhanded, like,
Yep.
or you got grounded. We didn't have cell phones back then, so it was different. And so those wounds basically get stuck. And it was fun because at the end of that temple, I had asked Troy, what words would you use for a samskara?
And uh, as one of the reasons I went with the word that I used was because he talked about how we kind of departmentalize the different wounds, like the traumas and stuff, and how we've got places that we hide them within ourselves. And I thought of it like a bucket, a 5-gallon bucket. That I've got this in my life. Instead of dealing with it, I'm just going to put it in this bucket and try to put a lid on
Oh,
it.
yeah, that's fun stuff right there.
And then through hearing him, I realized, I've got all kind of buckets in me that I've had emotional situations, hard stuff, abuse, abandonment that I had stuck away in these buckets and that I had lids on because he was talking about having the freedom to be who we are and to reach our higher self without emotional baggage coming into the present. And he says, until we deal with the emotions and the trauma that's in these buckets, are we able to have that emotional freedom and to be able to reach our higher selves, to be able to experience joy the word of God says that we're supposed to have that peace that passes all understanding, the joy that can only come from the Lord.
And I think also you left,
Hmm.
or you had told me that you had to leave, or you were uncomfortable because I think he hit a samskara while you were sitting there. I think I don't know, you were like, I don't know if I believe that, or I don't know. It hit something in you where you had a reaction to it.
Because I had been hearing how the way that I handled situations in my life because of the samskaras that's there, I allowed fear to come in. And instead of looking at the samskara and being able to heal that, Mickey Singer said something that so many people would say, "Oh, these are opportunities to be able to grow and learn." And I got tired of hearing that because they're very uncomfortable. When you
Well, and
start
you were saying even like that is not an opportunity that my stepdad beat me, right?
right,
Like that's
right.
not an opportunity. And so that is a perfect example of, you were reacting to it,
I was
right?
reacting instead of responding,
We
exactly, and
That's a
and that
trigger.
reaction, when I heard that, it caused a reaction of anger in me, and, I mean, my mind went back to the day that I had my face crammed in a cereal bowl, and I'm thinking, you know, you go back and look at that and tell me it's an opportunity for things to get better, and
Oh
it
yeah.
just kinda really pissed me off
Yeah.
when he said that, and
Yeah.
but
Well,
it was
because every time something happens that we don't process, it's not going to go away, right?
right.
It just gets stored in the bucket and
Mhm.
eventually that hits it and then the whole thing spills out. And so that brings us back to the conversation of like how we both have been in our lives. Like, I definitely have had a pattern of been fired quite
Mhm.
a few times in my career. Not because I'm not awesome, because I am a hard worker and I'm intelligent, but because I had a little bit of a temper and I know a lot of things. So I would come across as condescending or a know-it-all, and I would do that to bosses. Like I would be like, "You don't know what you're talking about. I know everything that I'm talking about." And eventually it just bothered people because I wasn't so much a team player. And so, but it wasn't that. I was absolutely that. I'm an Aquarius and I, have higher intuition and I
Mm.
just think people should understand my way.
And a
Uh,
very strong
a
opinion.
very strong opinion, yes. But I just, what I learned to do is just kind of shove it down and make it acceptable, right? And I would just kind of like, all right, calm down. And I had to modify myself, right?
Mhm.
And we talked about this with you as well.
Right. Yeah. I was because of abandonment in my life, I felt like as I got to the point of being a working man, I felt like I had to be the best at everything that I could be. I was a welder. I became the best down there at Flair Corporation. Everything I did, being all the way up to where I am now, being dump truck driver, owner operator of my dump truck, PTM trucking. When I pull up on the job, they want a load brought back. They send PTM because they know I'll get it there. And the reason that I did that was because of my whole childhood. I grew up being abandoned. My real father left before I was even born. My mom left me in 10th grade. 10th grade, I was left to be a grown man on my own. Emotionally wasn't ready for that. And through the abandonment, I felt like I was unworthy. And I just had that belief system within me because of the abandonment of unworthiness. I'm not good enough. So I did everything I could from that point on as an adult to be as worthy as I could be. I wanted to be valuable on the job to the point to where I would be accepted. That was my biggie right there was
But when you started awakening, those buckets can't stay hidden
mm-mm,
anymore.
mm-mm.
And
And I
so,
still struggle with that. I mean, I carried that for 54, 55 years of feeling an inadequacy of being worthy. And I still deal with it today. It still comes up, and I have to deal with it. I have to look at it. Okay, I see you.
well, and so part of our story, Troy, is sharing with people that the first couple of months that we were together, we would go and we would have these amazing weekends together. We would have these amazing times together. And then,
Well, why wouldn't you? You was with me.
oh, we do. We have fun together.
Uh,
But then what would happen is we would get really close and then he would react in a way that was just like I didn't even understand. And so he would get angry and upset and I would take it as if he was upset with me, but he really wasn't. All he was doing was reacting to a samskara, but we didn't neither of us knew that at the time. And so then, it was like bringing up stuff within me because I didn't I don't wanna be talked to like that, or I didn't wanna be like I couldn't, like, handle it, so we just kinda kept bouncing off each other, and we didn't really understand until we finally had kind of an aha weekend, and the truth is that he had an ex-wife, and we're not gonna say her name, but we'll just call her Tracy,
right.
and why don't you tell a little bit about her because, it's part of the story because I kept feeling like, "Wow, I'm getting blamed for this Tracy
Mm.
person."
Yeah, I didn't even realize what was going on. I know when I was married to Tracy, and then we ended up going through a divorce. It so crushed me the way things were left, and
'Cause she cheated on you.
she cheated on me, and it just and I mean, we was married for 5 years. I was looking back, hindsight. The signs were there. I just at the young age that I was, not so much that I didn't see them. I wasn't looking for them. Didn't want to see them. But then when it happened, it so pierced me and hurt me so bad that I refused. I refused to get back in a situation with a woman again to allow myself to be hurt like that. I even drew a line in the sand, kind of like Daniel did in Scripture when he drew that line in the sand and refused to eat the king's meat because he wasn't going to defile himself before God. He drew that line in the sand and he wasn't going to cross it. And that's what I did after that relationship. And I said, you know what? I'll be Johnny Brown if anybody's going to hurt me like that again. And it was through that. And then, here's the sad part. For 30 years, I went from relationship to relationship to relationship, being with women that
Couldn't hurt you.
they couldn't hurt me. And the reason they couldn't hurt me because I was never content with them. And that's why I chose those type of women. Even if they left, it wasn't going to bother me. For 30 years, I wasted my life on that. And
And then you met me.
I met Zan, and she came into the picture. And I remember the first weekend trip we took together. As I pulled up to her house, I told myself that day. I've told her a long time after that, but I told myself that day as I pulled up in my pickup truck, okay, this is my last weekend with her because she had the opportunity to be able to hurt me that way again because I was totally content with her. I mean, she's a beautiful woman, intelligent, smart, just she had all the attributes that I feel I would want in a woman. And I knew within my heart that she would have the opportunity to be able to hurt me. But as we went through the early stages of our relationship, as we started getting close, I would go back to the samskara of that bucket where I remembered how bad I was hurt from Tracy, and that's where
But you didn't really remember. You just reacted
I reacted, but it
from
was
that
from that. That's what
from
I'm
that
saying.
right. So
Yeah.
if you're listening here and you're having reactions
Mhm.
to things where you kind of go like, "Oh, that was like a little over the top. Like, why did I do that?" Right? Like if you get triggered and it's kind of out of place where the person you're getting triggered to says like, "Whoa, like, okay, you're being a hothead or whatever."
Mhm.
Right? That might be a good time for you to look at that and to realize that you've got an underlying wound. I mean, that's what it is.
Right. Then that's exactly what it was, and that day sitting in that parking lot.
So, okay, let's tell the story. So what happened was this kept happening. Like we would have these wonderful dates and experiences, and then something would trigger him, and then it would turn to, and what I would do is just shut down. Like
And the fear coming up in me, just because I hadn't dealt with that pain from 30 years ago, that the fear of that pain would come up in me and make me an unpleasant person. Man.
it was emotional closeness plus vulnerability
Yep.
triggering your unresolved past.
Right.
And so, because love led to pain, vulnerability led to loss and betrayal.
Yep.
And every time that you got closer to me, you felt like you were going to be hurt.
Yep.
And it was really getting exhausting for me because I never had that before. And I thought, this is so crazy because, you'll learn in our origin story, like we have a very deep karmic past. And so I knew I loved this person. I wanted to be with him, but wow, it was just really challenging for me. It was just the fear of being hurt again. And his nervous system was just trying to protect him from that old pain. So he had this anger and this shield that was coming up that I had no awareness about. So it was really like difficult for me. But then we go to breakfast one day and it was a lovely day. We went to the park, we went to the grocery store, we went and had pancakes and something happened and it was the same thing and we're sitting in the car and I don't know, I must have been pressing on you, like helping you because the whole time I'm really trying to help him. I'm using all the spiritual tools I can, giving him books to read, Asking
Yeah.
It Is Given by uh, Esther Hicks about Abraham and The New Earth
The
by
new
Eckhart
earth.
Tolle,
Yeah.
talking about the ego. And we're sitting in the car and it hit you, right? It hit
Yeah.
you that it was like, wow, this is all old stuff coming up about Tracy.
Yeah, I mean, it just hit me right between the eyes as we was sitting there and kind of having a disagreement, and I was being myself as I always was when that fear would come in. What was the guy's T-shirt? What did it say?
So we were sitting there in the car, and there was a guy sitting next to us. They were smoking cigarettes outside, and the back of his shirt says, "It's okay to not be okay. Just don't give up."
Yeah, it's okay not to be okay. Just don't give up. And when I read that shirt, I don't, it just so resonated with me. And then I realized, you know what? This is what's taking place. Is I am going back 30 years and remembering the pain that I went through, and I'm bringing that into this relationship and causing the friction that we're experiencing now.
Oh yeah, and it was beautiful. So we laughed after that because we were like, wow. And so here's the beautiful thing about awakening, also that I want to share with people that they may or may not realize is the magic of life shows up when you say yes, when you're in that moment. And
Hmm.
so we see the shirt, and I'm thinking, and I know this, I recognize this because I've been on the spiritual path for a long time. I was like, wow, universe is starting to talk back to us. Like, this is great. Like, this is like confirmation. So
Right.
we go into the grocery store
Hmm.
and we're in this aisle, and Troy is looking at something. I'm looking at something else. And there's this like tall light that's kind of like shining down, and there's a clerk in there named Cedric, and he looks at the two of us and he says, "Are you guys together?" And we said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Wow, look at you. You're so beautiful, divine, and you're of the light." And he literally like repeated exactly what we were talking about in the car.
Yep. 'Cause see, she had told me that the importance of staying in the present,
Yeah.
and he harped on that, you
Yeah.
know.
That is that it's not random timing. The stranger mirrored our exact conversation. And so then he like pretends to pick up the phone and talk to God.
Mhm.
And he's, like, literally having a conversation with or an angel, and he's like, "Yeah, they don't believe that I'm here and I'm talking to you, like, I know it seems like I should just be a human, but I'm really not." And, like, he's, like, acting like he's, like, an angel talking to us, acting this thing out, being funny, but really, I honestly thought he was an angel.
Well, the scripture says, that we are being entertained by angels, be unaware, not knowing.
Yeah, and
And, I honestly believe that he was. I mean, for him to speak into our life for the exact same thing we're doing and have the same message that we needed
yeah,
to hear, just
and then I started crying because my body generally will respond. So that's the other thing that could happen when you awaken is that your body will respond to all of these triggers, energy, awareness that it's a samskara, right? You'll
mhm,
like for me, I'll start to cry. I cry when I experience love. And I cry when I have this awareness of like, whoa, that's something that's being healed. And so I did. I cried in that moment and just was like, I couldn't believe it because I've seen and witnessed a lot of amazing things in my reality, but that took the cake.
yeah, that was divine appointment, no doubt.
Yeah. And so that moment is what we call a pattern break,
Yeah,
right? And so the thing about a pattern break is when you do that, you're stopping that samskara or you're healing it. It's all about feeling through the samskara. That's the one thing that we've been learning recently is you can't just push it down anymore. So part of awakening is realizing that you are not your patterns, right? You are not your samskaras, but you are the one that is becoming aware of them,
mhm,
right? And so you're no longer reacting from an old identity. You're witnessing it. And
yep.
so tell us a story about that you have experienced recently. Yes, our little dog Kippy is trying to get part of the conversation.
Trying to climb up in my lap, ain't he?
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of spiraling, I've been chosen to, well, as I become aware of it, what I've learned to do is to realize it, look at it, and then once I look at it, I lean into it and act in a different way than I normally would. Act in the correct way. Act in a way that would be better to the circumstance or situation.
The other thing is that, Troy was an aggressive man.
Yeah, I was an aggressive man, and because of the child abuse and being abused by my stepfather, once I got old enough, I was not going to allow myself. Nobody was ever going to put their hands on me that way again. And to the point to where I had a chip on my shoulders. In other words, I kind of looked for the opportunity for that to happen, and that was one of the ways that I was able to release a little bit of the trauma that I had within inside of me. It didn't heal it, but it just
And let's paint a picture. So that looks like him. He was in a bar and somebody looked at him wrong.
yeah, somebody gave me the opportunity of, and more often than not, because I'm not a big guy, I'm a little guy, and I don't know if you realize it, but the bullies always go for the little guy. The opportunities were there more often than they wasn't, and as soon as an opportunity arose, it did. It made me aggressive. It made me more aggressive than I needed to be, but I just wasn't going to be thumped on that way innocently again. If they were going to thump on me, they was going to earn it, and it was going to be more than they wanted.
Yeah, like you do not, which is awesome for me because like nobody's ever gonna hurt me. But this is my boyfriend. But that was obviously it's not sustainable, right?
No,
That is not
no.
something that you want to live your life in that capacity. And so what I do want to say is that through this process, so he had an experience this week actually that has
Yeah.
proven itself healing. Do you want to tell that story?
Yeah, yeah. In other words, I was about a year and a half ago. I was on a job with my dump truck, and a guy backed into me, and I got out the truck, gonna go over there and just yank him out the truck and deal with him in a manner that he would understand and not do that again, which wouldn't have been pleasant. And there was a guy there that day that was on the job that I was on yesterday, and he was operating a excavator, and he accidentally broke my tarp arm on my truck. And he went back to that day in Williston, Florida, whenever I got kind of irate about the guy backing into my dump truck. And as soon as he broke my tarp arms, he jumped out the excavator. His eyes was big around as they could be. And you could just kind of see the fear. Okay, I've got to deal with this guy. I've done seen him pissed off, and that's the last thing I want to do. And as he got out and he come up to me, and he was all worried about it and just stressed out, and he, man, I'm so sorry. Hey man, let's not sweat the small stuff. It don't matter. All it is tarp arms. We'll be all right. And it kind of floored him. But since my awakening and since the awareness of the trauma that I came from, I'm able to see situations different and be able to, just like yesterday, I didn't react. Instead, I responded in a way that was of love and light and ease and grace. And even the guy said, "I can't believe this. I can't." It floored him, and I'm so thankful for that. I'm so thankful to be able to see fruits from doing the work and recognizing that.
I think that's such a beautiful testimony to the work that he has been doing for people outside who know him to see how you have processed that and in real life. And we'll talk more about that. It's allowing things to happen, staying in that present moment. All of your samskaras were from your childhood and you just had no awareness about it.
You're right.
And
I had no idea. And I would like to hit on that if I could.
yeah,
In other words, being in the church for 15 years, and I'm so grateful for the foundation that the church has gave me. Learning from scripture, going to college, and learning so much. I'm forever grateful for that. But one thing that I never heard from within the church was going back to heal these wounds. The Apostle Paul said that, that we must die to ourselves daily. And now I come to understand that's one of the things he's talking about is we have to die to those old wounds, the samskara that gets in the way of us being able to be our higher self. And in doing that, within the church, what I was always told was if I'm allowing the past to bother me, that means my faith isn't strong enough, which isn't true. I mean, you got to go back and deal with the past traumas. And my awakening to this is equivalent to salvation within the church. In the church, you're drawn by the Holy Spirit to realize that you are in need of salvation. And awakening is pretty much the same process. You're drawn to realizing there's a divine within spiritual journey. You come to understand that you have a spiritual draw to the divine and wanting to become your better self. The awakening, when that draw starts taking place, hell can't get in the way of that. The only thing that's going to be able to get in the way of that is you.
right. And so as we wrap this up, we want to ask the question. So, like, what do you do with this? So you've now recognized on this conversation that you have triggers and perhaps you have your own buckets and
Hmm.
you can now recall areas in your life and you'll know because you have patterns and it's something that keeps not working in your life, whether it's relationships, whether it's work, whether it's my brother used to like chuck his golf club when he got mad because he couldn't play golf properly, right? That's an anger thing. Where does that anger come from? So now that you've recognized it, what can we do to deal with that in the now before we dive into anything else? So I just want to speak to that, which is you listen to your inner rhythms rather than doing something that you've always done before. Because if you do that, it's going to benefit your soul. So if you think about it, it's like you're in this rut, right? You have a groove that
Yep.
you've been doing over and over that's just a pattern that just keeps happening. You break that pattern with the awareness but then you also do something different. It's a pattern interrupt. So you have the awareness, you see the bucket, you don't react right away, which is really hard to do in the beginning because this is a pattern, right? And
Right.
it could
When
be
you go
30 years.
55 years of reacting, and your knee jerk reaction's never the right one. It's never the right way to go.
Right. So, and then you look for some kind of process, right? And so there's all kinds of processes out there that can help you, which is perhaps therapy or tapping or somatic work, dancing, moving your body. There's things about the nervous system. I mean, there's a lot of tools out there which we'll share later, but you interrupt that. If you can't do it on your own, then you use a tool to do that. And then you take responsibility. I mean, that's the other thing is
Own it.
own it. I am actually guilty of that. There's been times in my life where I realized that I have gaslit people because my way was the right way, which is part of that whole, why it didn't work out with certain bosses or certain jobs. And I just thought, well, these people are idiots. Like I have all the answers. And
Mm,
it was really not that. It was just like taking accountability. Well, I never wanted to take accountability because that means I got in trouble. And so I had this whole pattern of being defensive. And you probably know this from when we first started dating. I was very defensive. Like
yep.
if you ever criticized me, which even and you don't, you're so sweet. Like
Mm,
he does not criticize me, only says wonderful loving things about me, but other people have, right? And I
yeah.
would I would get defensive. So where that to me that was a samskara. Like why am I so defensive? Like who cares what that person said, right? I would have this whole thing where I don't really care what people said unless you said something that triggered me, and then I would get defensive because it was like, "Oh," and it boiled down to me not being seen,
Right.
right? And it
Yep.
wasn't until I realized what that even meant for me. So there's a rabbit hole that you will go down, and that's part of it, right? It's not about one stop shop because that is not the thing. We are all learning this in real time, all of us. And you could be 16 years old learning this. You could be 35 years old and you're just learning this, or you could be our age, or you could be even like 70. The
Yep.
the challenge for me is when people say, I'm too old, I don't need to change. I'm going to call bullshit on that because you can always change because if you do not, then you'll be coming back in the next lifetime to do the karma clearing that
Mm,
you didn't do in this lifetime.
right.
And so if you've had hard times in this lifetime, it's going to be just another layer. And,
Yep.
like we're great. We're like halfway through our life right now.
Yeah.
Right. And we're going through these things. And this last 3 months has not been easy.
No, not at all.
Because there's been some choice, had some deep, deep samskaras. And the discoveries of those, this is the difference between therapy and doing the work on your own, like through tapping or somatic healing, right? It's like it's releasing it through the body. Our body stores energy. Uh, I'm sure people are aware of this or they're not, but cancer and all disease actually comes from disruption in the body. The
Mhm.
cells are vibrating at a discord. And when that happens, that's when you have disease. That's when you get cancer. It's with stress or with worry or with doubt,
Mhm. Anxiety.
anxiety, those patterns. Imagine 30, I'm surprised that you're as healthy as you are because after 30 years of the same pattern, there has to be the body can only hold on for so long. So for me, it's in my gut. Everything I was like holding was like in my gut. And now, I'm processing a lot of that in the now. And so it's really recognizing that. So another way for you to see the trigger, feel the triggers. Where is it in your body? If you can feel it, it's generally going to be your throat, your
Yes.
chest, your stomach, or your gut area. Sometimes it'll
Mhm.
be in the head. Sometimes it gets really overwhelming and it can
Mhm.
be in your head. And if you have any of those responses, or you cry, or you have any kind of emotional response, you have a samskara.
Right. And I mean, I get to the point to where I ask myself, "Okay, where is it?" I've kinda learned to understand, find out where it is in my body. That helps me with being able to come to terms with what it is.
So in closing, we want to say if you feel like you're losing control, and it's really easy to do in what's happening in this fire horse year, you're not breaking. Your buckets are just overflowing, and now they can finally be emptied. So, on each podcast, we have a fire. Roy, can you light the fire?
Fire's lit.
And so, what are you going to leave in the fire tonight?
What am I going to leave in the fire tonight? Tonight, I want to leave. My gratitude practice hadn't been like it should be. I've kind of had a shift in myself within the last couple of days, realizing, and I can tell I have because, I shared with you earlier today about how beautiful everything is. Things have become more clear, and one of the things I want to start doing, is being more thankful for just the small things in life. We always want the big trophy at the end of the race, but sometimes the small things mean just as much as the big stuff does, and I want to just have more of a grateful heart for where I am in life and what's taking place and being intentional with being aware of that.
I love that. Also, might be a good time to share how does it get any better with the audience?
Yeah, how does it get any better? Last episode I talked about not speaking negatively, and that's one of the ways that I would do it. Something good takes place. Boy, it can't get no better than this. Well, okay, you just capped it right there. You just made it to where it can't get no better by saying what you said.
Yeah,
In other words, instead of saying it can't get no better, how about let's saying, how does this get any better? And then watch it'll get better
it will get
every
better.
time. And I mean, I've done experienced it and seen it, and and that's one of the things about just how we speak and being grateful. How does it get any better?
I love that. The gratitude, right? Like being grateful is the highest frequency. When I had my water company and we did tests on the water, love and gratitude were the two as highest frequencies. They tasted the best. And if anybody wants, they can do their own test. You just take a empty bottle of water, take a piece of scotch tape and write on there, I have always been grateful, and leave that overnight and the water will be amazing in the morning because water is carrying frequency. And then you have that gratitude. And you can also, if you remember in the moment when you're drinking water, you can also be grateful for your water. And then that actually goes into your cells and your mitochondria. Like all these things are interrelated in this reality. And that's a whole nother show. So I don't want to.
Well, what are you bringing to the fire?
That is a good question. So, around awakening, for me, I've been a high achiever my whole life, right? Also, like you. And I've been pushing and pushing, always want to be the best, want to be the best. And this new version of my awake self is just more going with the flow, but also doing things that come alive in me and following the energy and not saying, okay, I got to do this, this, and this, and this. Like today, I was going to work on the website, but just didn't happen. And so that's okay. And so it's really understanding that dance and not panicking about all the things we have to do before we leave on our big soul journey,
As sojourners?
going out on the road. And so getting excited about where we're going and what we're doing and coming from more excitement. It's been a while since I've really been really in it. I used to, it was like everything I was before, and I've kind of lost that. But now I'm in a different mindset because I too am waking up to a new level of being. I'll just wrap this up with I did a somatic ceremony over the weekend with some women, and I realized that, ladies, if you're in menopause, you are a crone, which really is your crown, and that you're in this final stage of your life, and there's no real ceremony to cross over, right? Like when you are a woman and you go into puberty, what is called when like the Mexican tradition, or
Yeah.
like a confirmation or a cotillion, right? When you become a woman, but there's no ceremony for like when you're like moving to the next phase. Not that I'm aware of, anyway. Once I acknowledged that, it was wow, it was deeply, deeply emotional. So really, just accepting myself as this new version of my awakening to who I am in the now. And so that adjustment, putting in the fire, the ease to allow that to come without rushing and without force, without making things happen. And I know that was more than one word.
But that was good. That was real good. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been that's been quite an adjustment for you. I've so well lived it.
Lucky you.
Yeah, lucky you, mate. But
Y-
that's all good. You
You're in
know.
partnership with
Well, that's right.
a
Been
crone.
a crone. Been a wonderful thing. What better way to love on her than
Yeah, that's actually been a blessing in this relationship to have somebody witness a lot of the struggles that I have been going through. So we've been going through that while Troy is awakening to the spiritual side. So we're flexing our
yeah,
muscles right now.
yeah.
Yay for us. So we hope that you enjoyed this. We do have a succession of shows lined up for you that will kind of touch upon different areas so that you can do more deep dives on your own. We're not professionals, we're walking with you. We are just sharing our story so that you can investigate on your own. And we hope that that has helped you to awaken. We hope that it will provide more trust in yourself and the universe so that you can reach alignment and live your best and highest life. So thank you. Until the next podcast, love and light,
Ease and grace.
and we'll meet you at the fire.
Meet you at the fire.